Captain James Mercer had spent his first night on Zorinthia, reflecting on the strange world he now inhabited. The Crystal Palace seemed alive with energy, almost as if it could think and observe. Every shimmer of light, every hum of the walls, felt purposeful. When he woke, the guards returned to escort him to the main hall. He knew that the Queen would begin her trials today, and he felt a mixture of anticipation and determination. He had made it through the first encounter by standing tall, and now he would have to prove himself in ways that tested more than his courage. The corridor leading to the hall seemed even larger in daylight, though the twin suns cast shadows that danced across the walls, making the crystal surfaces sparkle like stars. Mercer noticed small details that hinted at the Zorinthian culture, symbols etched into the walls, designs that told stories of battles, victories, and leaders long past. The guards were silent, their movements precise, as if they had rehearsed these steps 1,000 times. Every glance Mercer gave them was met with disciplined stillness, a constant reminder of the order and control that the Queen maintained. When he entered the hall, Thalira was waiting, standing tall at the far end. Her posture was rigid, her eyes glowing as she studied him. This time there was no throne. She wanted to see him directly, without barriers. "Captain Mercer," she said, her voice echoing softly, "you have proven that you will not kneel. Now we shall see what you are made of. Today you will face tests designed to measure your courage, your intelligence, and your resolve." Mercer nodded respectfully, though he remained standing. "I am ready, Your Majesty," he replied. He could feel the eyes of the courtiers on him, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Some had whispered that no human could survive what the Queen had prepared, yet here he was, showing neither fear nor hesitation. The first trial was physical, but with a twist. Mercer was led to a vast chamber filled with shifting platforms and glowing barriers. The floor pulsed with energy, and the walls seemed to shift as he moved. His task was to cross the chamber without triggering the barriers, which would release powerful energy surges capable of incapacitating even the strongest human. The guards stood at the edges, observing silently, while the Queen watched from a balcony above. Mercer took a deep breath and began. He moved carefully, studying the patterns of light and energy, testing small movements before committing to each step. The chamber was a puzzle, not just a physical challenge. He realized quickly that rushing would be fatal. By observing the flow of energy, the subtle shifts in light and the reactions of the barriers, he slowly and methodically made his way across. Each step required focus, balance, and patience. When he reached the other side, the Queen's eyes glimmered with a hint of approval, though her expression remained stern. The second trial was mental, designed to test his intelligence and problem-solving skills. Mercer was placed in a room filled with floating crystal panels, each etched with symbols and images that seemed to shift constantly. He was tasked with rearranging the panels to form a coherent sequence, one that represented a story of the Zorinthian people. At first, the panel seemed impossible to understand. The images changed as he focused on them, creating illusions that tested perception and reasoning. Mercer concentrated, recalling the symbols he had seen in the palace corridors and the carvings that told stories of battles and leadership. He noticed subtle patterns, the way certain symbols repeated, the rhythm in which the images shifted. Step by step, he began to arrange the panels correctly, forming a sequence that depicted a great battle, a leader's rise, and the unity of the Zorinthian people. When he completed the task, the panels glowed brightly, and the room hummed with energy. Again, the Queen's eyes reflected intrigue and surprise. The third trial was a test of character and moral judgment. Mercer was presented with a simulation of a village under attack by a wild creature native to Zorinthia. The simulation was so realistic that he could feel the heat, hear the screams, and see the chaos unfold. He had two choices: follow the instructions given by the Queen's advisors, which involved sacrificing some of the villagers to save others, or find a solution that minimized harm and saved as many as possible. Mercer immediately began to think creatively. He observed the creature's movements, noticed its patterns, and devised a plan to lure it away from the village using available resources. He guided the villagers to safety, used traps to contain the creature, and managed to prevent any casualties. When the simulation ended, the Queen studied him intently. This trial was meant to show the limits of human empathy, the idea that humans might be too idealistic to survive on Zorinthia. Yet Mercer had succeeded. As the day progressed, Mercer faced more challenges. Some were physical, requiring agility and strength to navigate dangerous terrain within the palace. Some were intellectual, testing his ability to solve complex puzzles and anticipate outcomes. Others were ethical, examining his decision-making in high-pressure situations. Each trial was more difficult than the last, yet Mercer relied on observation, reasoning, and integrity. With every success, he noticed the Queen's expression shifting, subtle changes that suggested respect growing where there had once been only doubt. Between trials, Mercer had moments to observe the Zorinthian people. He saw them working together in ways humans often did not, combining discipline, strategy, and unity. He noticed that while their culture emphasized strength and obedience, there were nuances of loyalty, trust, and honor embedded in their society. He began to understand that the Queen's pride was not mere arrogance, but a reflection of centuries of tradition and survival. The Lyra, for her part, found herself both frustrated and fascinated by the human before her. He did not kneel, yet he showed respect in his actions. He did not rush blindly, yet he took risks when necessary. He did not follow orders blindly, yet he acted with integrity. Every time he overcame a challenge, he demonstrated qualities she had not expected in a human. Slowly, the rigid assumptions she held about other species began to shift. She could not deny his intelligence, nor could she ignore the courage and thoughtfulness he displayed. By evening, Mercer was exhausted but alert. The final trial of the day was unlike the others. He was brought to an open courtyard within the palace where the twin suns reflected off the crystals, casting dazzling patterns across the space. There, he was confronted with a creature native to Zorinthia, enormous and imposing, known for its strength and ferocity. The task was simple in instruction but nearly impossible in execution. Survive the encounter and demonstrate mastery over fear. Mercer did not hesitate. He assessed the creature, noting its movements, the way it responded to stimuli, and the surrounding environment. Rather than attack blindly, he used strategy, observation, and quick thinking. He dodged, lured, and guided the creature toward a containment area designed for such encounters. The creature resisted, striking with power and speed. But Mercer's training and composure allowed him to anticipate and adapt. Finally, the creature was contained, unharmed, and Mercer had proven his courage without resorting to violence beyond what was necessary. The Lyra watched the entire encounter from a balcony above. When it concluded, she descended to meet him in the courtyard. She did not speak at first, simply studying him. Mercer, though tired, remained standing, showing neither relief nor arrogance. His gaze met hers steadily, silently conveying that he had not acted out of fear or desire for approval, but from his own principles. Finally, the Queen spoke. "You have done what few could even attempt," she said, her voice carrying both authority and curiosity. "You have passed the trials of strength, intelligence, and character. Yet there is something more. Something in your nature that cannot be measured by tests alone. You do not kneel, yet you are not defiant without purpose. You do not fear, yet you act with caution. You are remarkable, Captain Mercer." Mercer inclined his head respectfully. "I am grateful, Your Majesty. I only seek to do what is right and to prevent unnecessary suffering between our peoples." The Queen's expression softened slightly, a sign of approval that was rare in her court. She realized that the human before her was not merely surviving the trials, he was teaching her something in return. Through his actions, he showed courage, intelligence, and moral clarity. He challenged her assumptions about humans and, in a way, began to challenge her assumptions about herself. As night fell over Zorinthia once more, Mercer rested, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for the first time, he sensed a shift in the Queen's attitude. a recognition that perhaps strength was not only in power and authority, but also in wisdom, courage, and integrity. The trials had tested his body, mind, and spirit, but they had also begun to form a bridge of understanding between human and alien, one that could grow into trust and perhaps, one day, into friendship. In the quiet of his chamber, Mercer reflected on the day's events. He had faced fearsome creatures, solved impossible puzzles, and navigated moral dilemmas with careful judgment. Each success had been a step toward understanding the Queen, her people, and the world of Zorinthia. He realized that his mission was no longer just about diplomacy. It was about demonstrating humanity in a way that the Queen could see, respect, and perhaps one day, value. And so, as he prepared for SIs, Captain James Mercer had always faced dangerous missions in his career, but nothing had prepared him for what awaited him on Zorinthia. As the transport ship cut through the atmosphere of the alien world, James gazed out of the small viewport, his eyes widening at the sight below. The planet's surface shimmered in shades of violet and gold, with jagged crystal formations rising like mountains in every direction. Rivers of liquid light ran between these crystal peaks, glowing softly, under the twin suns that hovered in the sky. The beauty was mesmerizing, yet there was a sense of danger in the air, an energy that felt alive, as if the planet itself was watching him. The mission was clear: establish contact with the ruler of Zorinthia, the alien Queen Thalira, and negotiate peace. Reports from previous human envoys had warned of her unmatched pride, her cunning, and her swift temper. Any misstep could spark a war. Mercer's mind raced as he reviewed the details of the mission once more. He had trained for combat, for diplomacy, for negotiation, and for survival. Yet he could not shake the feeling that this encounter would test more than his skills. It would test his very principles. The shuttle touched down smoothly on a platform, carved into one of the largest crystal formations. As James stepped out, the first thing he noticed was the intense glow of the crystals, refracting light in patterns that almost seemed like messages. The air was thick with an unfamiliar energy that made his skin tingle. He had been briefed about the environment, but the reality was far beyond anything he had imagined. The platform was enormous, stretching into a palace built entirely of translucent crystal. The architecture was unlike anything humans had ever created. Spires twisted toward the sky in impossible shapes, and the surface seemed to hum softly, underfoot. Zorinthian guards, tall and armored in luminous suits that reflected the colors of the crystals, approached him. Their eyes were large and dark, shining like polished gemstones, and their expressions were unreadable. One of them stepped forward. A slight bow to acknowledge him and spoke in a language that Mercer could understand through his translator. "You are here to meet the Queen. Follow us." Mercer's pulse quickened as he followed the guards along a pathway that wound through the crystal palace. The corridor walls glimmered with energy, and every step echoed with a sound that felt almost alive. He could sense eyes watching him from every angle, but when he turned, he saw no one. It was as if the palace itself was observing him, judging him. The guards led him through a series of vast chambers, each more impressive than the last. Pools of liquid light reflected the ceilings, and intricate carvings depicted the history of the Zorinthian people, battles won and lost, alliances formed and broken. Finally, they reached a massive hall, larger than any cathedral on Earth. At the far end, sitting on a throne made of black crystal, was Thalira. She was taller than any human, with an imposing presence that seemed to fill the room. Her skin shimmered like molten silver, and her eyes glowed with an inner light that seemed to pierce directly through James. Around her, courtiers and advisors moved silently, their movements precise and graceful, showing the strict order of the palace. As Mercer approached, the Queen's gaze fixed on him, sharp and calculating. She expected him to kneel, as every previous envoy had. This was a sign of submission, a way to acknowledge her authority without question. Mercer, however, stopped a few steps from the throne and stood tall. He did not bow. He did not kneel. He simply looked her in the eyes, steady and unwavering. The room fell silent. Courtiers exchanged glances, whispers spreading through the hall like wildfire. Thalira's eyes narrowed, a flash of surprise and perhaps annoyance crossing her face. No human had ever defied her in this way. She had built her reputation on fear and respect, commanding obedience without question, and yet, here was this human standing proud, refusing to acknowledge her in the way she demanded. Mercer spoke first, his voice calm but firm. "Your Majesty, I am Captain James Mercer of the United Earth Federation. I come in peace, to negotiate, and prevent conflict between our peoples. I am here to speak as an equal, not to kneel before anyone." The Queen's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. It was not a smile of warmth, but one of intrigue. She had encountered many species, many leaders, and yet this human displayed a courage she had not expected. Most beings trembled at her presence, but he did not. Instead of fear, she saw confidence, dignity, and a strange kind of strength. "Very well," she said, her voice echoing in the hall. "If you will not kneel, then you will remain standing. Guards, take him to the holding chambers." Mercer's heart sank slightly. He had anticipated resistance, but being detained immediately was more severe than he expected. He followed the guards without protest, keeping his posture straight, his mind focused. He knew that every action, every word, every decision in the coming hours could mean life or death, not just for him, but for the possibility of peace between humans and Zorinthians. The holding chambers were located deep within the palace, a series of rooms carved directly into the crystal formations. They were secure, yet strangely beautiful. Light refracted through the walls, casting shifting patterns that made it seem as though the room was alive. Mercer could not help but marvel at the architecture even as he prepared for whatever the Queen had planned. He knew that survival would require more than strength. It would require intelligence, observation, and patience. As he waited, he reflected on the reports he had read about Thalira. She was known not only for her power but for her stubbornness. She trusted no one and tested every visitor, every ally, every subordinate. Many envoys had failed simply because they tried to appease her without understanding her ways. Mercer realized that his choice to stand had already set him apart. He had challenged her expectations, and in doing so, he had caught her attention. Hours passed, and the chamber remained quiet. Mercer meditated on his training, recalling every lesson in diplomacy, survival, and leadership. He knew the Queen would test him, perhaps in ways he could not imagine. But he was determined to face whatever came, not as a servant or a subject, but as a human representative of his people. Finally, the chamber doors opened, and he was escorted to a smaller, more private room where Thalira herself appeared. She did not sit on a throne here. Instead, she stood before him, tall and imposing. "You are unlike any human I have met," she said, her voice both a challenge and a curiosity. "You refuse to kneel, yet you do not show fear. Tell me, Captain Mercer, what makes you so certain of yourself?" Mercer met her gaze steadily. "Because fear does not lead to peace, Your Majesty. Courage, understanding, and honesty lead to lasting alliances. I am here to prevent conflict, not to prove submission." Thalira studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, with a nod, she said, "Interesting. You will remain here for now, but know this, Zorinthia does not forgive easily. Many have tried to stand where you stand, and many have fallen." Mercer remained calm. He had expected the warning, and he accepted it. He understood that the Queen's test was only beginning, and that patience, resilience, and integrity would be his greatest tools. As he settled into the chamber, Mercer observed the room, the patterns of light, the subtle movements of energy within the crystals. He noticed small details, a vibration in the floor, the way the light shifted depending on movement, even the faint hum of power running through the walls. Every observation could be a clue to understanding the Queen, her people, and the world. They inhabited night, or what passed for night under Zorinthia's twin suns fell. The light dimmed, and the crystal palace transformed, glowing softly with an inner energy. Mercer could hear the faint sounds of the city outside, alien voices, distant hums of machinery, and the quiet pulse of life in a world so unlike his own. He felt a strange sense of awe and humility. Despite the danger, he could not deny the beauty of the place, the elegance of its architecture, and the intelligence of its ruler. As sleep overtook him, he knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests and new revelations, but one thought remained clear in his mind. He would not kneel, not out of pride, but out of respect for what was right. That choice, small though it might seem, was the first step in a journey that could change not only his life, but the fate of 2 worlds. The following morning on Zorinthia, Captain James Mercer awoke with a sense of purpose. The trials he had faced so far had tested his strength, intelligence, and character. But today he sensed something different was coming. There was a tension in the air, an undercurrent that suggested more than routine challenges. The twin suns streamed through the crystal walls of his chamber, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the room. As he prepared himself, he knew that whatever awaited him would require not only skill but trust, courage, and careful judgment. When the guards returned to escort him, Mercer noticed an unusual urgency in their movements. They led him through the palace corridors, past halls he had already traversed, but today there was an energy he had not felt before. The air seemed charged, and the hum of the crystals vibrated more intensely. The queen, Thalira, awaited him in a chamber larger than any he had seen. The walls were lined with massive crystalline windows, offering a panoramic view of the city below, where Zorinthians moved with precision and purpose. "Captain Mercer," the queen began, her voice steady but carrying an edge of concern. "Today, you will face a challenge unlike any before. Your purpose is no longer to prove yourself alone, but to understand the delicate balance of trust, leadership, and cooperation." She paused, her glowing eyes studying him carefully. "There is a threat within my people. A group of rogue generals seeks to overthrow me. They are planning an attack, one that could destroy our city and bring harm to your kind as well. You will assist me in confronting this danger." Mercer's heart raced, but his face remained calm. He had trained for situations like this, unexpected, threats, high stakes, and the need for immediate, precise action. But the pressure was immense. He nodded respectfully. "I will do everything in my power to help, Your Majesty. Tell me what you need me to do." Thalira's expression softened for a brief moment, revealing a flicker of trust. "Observe, learn, and act. The rogue generals are cunning. They expect us to follow predictable patterns. We must outthink them at every step. I will rely on your perspective, something new, something human, to anticipate their moves." The 2 of them left the palace together, moving swiftly through corridors that led to the central command hall. Thalira's guards followed silently, a protective barrier around them, but also a reminder of the danger that lurked everywhere. As they approached the command hall, Mercer observed the Queen's leadership style. She moved with precision, issuing commands with authority. Yet she paused to listen, to observe reactions, and to adjust accordingly. He realized that her stubborn pride did not mean rigidity. She had learned to combine instinct with strategy, and it was this combination that had made her a powerful ruler. The first sign of the threat came when the city's alarm sounded, a deep, resonant tone that vibrated through the crystalline structures. The rogue generals had begun their assault, and chaos rippled through the streets below. Thalira and Mercer moved quickly to the command center, where holographic displays showed the positions of both the city's defenders and the rogue forces. The situation was more dangerous than he had anticipated. The rebels had coordinated their attack with precision, striking multiple points simultaneously to divide the city's attention. Mercer quickly assessed the situation. He noticed patterns in the rebels' approach, small details that indicated their strategy. Unlike the Zorinthian leaders who relied on instinct and strength, Mercer's human training emphasized prediction, analysis, and adaptability. He pointed out vulnerabilities in the rebels' plan, suggesting ways to redirect resources and strengthen weak points. Thalira listened carefully, her glowing eyes reflecting both focus and curiosity. She had seen many advisors, many strategists, but Mercer's observations were different, logical, unbiased, and innovative. Together, they coordinated a defense. Thalira directed the city's forces with bold, instinctive maneuvers, while Mercer suggested calculated adjustments that maximized efficiency and minimized risk. The synergy between them was surprising. Where Thalira's decisions were daring and decisive, Mercer's were careful and analytical. The combination created a dynamic that neither of them had expected, and it began to shift the battle in their favor. As the rogue forces pressed forward, Mercer and Thalira moved to a strategic observation point overlooking the city. From there, they could see the chaos unfolding. Buildings of crystalline construction shimmered as they absorbed the impact of attacks, and citizens scurried to safety, guided by both human and Zorinthian strategies. Mercer noticed a group of civilians trapped in a collapsing structure. Without hesitation, he grabbed equipment and, with the help of a small team of Zorinthian soldiers, rushed to their aid. Thalira observed his actions silently. In that moment, she understood something profound. Mercer's courage was not limited to combat or strategy. It extended to empathy and protection. He risked his life not for glory, but to save others. This was a trait she admired deeply, even if she would never openly admit it. The battle escalated. The rogue generals had expected the Queen to rely solely on instinct, and Mercer's input disrupted their plans. He suggested diversions, defensive traps, and clever maneuvers that the Zorinthian soldiers executed with surprising precision under Thalira's direction. Slowly, the tide turned. The rebels began to falter, unable to adapt to the combination of human strategy and alien strength. At a critical moment, Thalira found herself surrounded by a group of highly trained rebel commanders. Mercer realized that her instincts had led her into a dangerous position. He acted swiftly, coordinating a small team to break through and provide support. In a daring move, he neutralized several threats, giving Thalira the opening she needed to regain control. She fought with unmatched skill, but it was Mercer's timing and ingenuity that saved the day. After the immediate danger passed, the rebels retreated, leaving behind a city battered but intact. Thalira and Mercer stood together, observing the aftermath. The streets were filled with citizens emerging cautiously, watching the rulers who had protected them. For the first time, Mercer saw a different side of the Queen, not the unyielding, proud figure he had first encountered, but a leader capable of cooperation, reflection, and even humility. Thalira turned to him, her expression a mix of admiration and lingering pride. "You have done well, Captain Mercer," she said. "Not just in the battle, but in understanding how to guide and inspire. You are not merely brave, you are clever, compassionate, and unwavering. Few humans would act as you have." Mercer inclined his head, acknowledging her praise without arrogance. "I only did what I thought was right, Your Majesty. Your leadership inspired me as much as my training guided me. Together, we protected the people and prevented greater harm." The Queen studied him silently for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled, a real, genuine smile that softened her stern features. "I underestimated you," she admitted. "I expected defiance without understanding, and yet you have shown wisdom, courage, and honor. Perhaps I was wrong to assume humans cannot comprehend strategy and morality beyond instinct." Mercer felt a subtle shift in their relationship. No longer was he merely a guest or a prisoner. He had become a partner, a trusted advisor in a moment of crisis. The experience had forged a bond based on respect, trust, and shared purpose. Though they came from different worlds with vastly different cultures and experiences, they had worked together toward a common goal. In the quiet moments after the battle, Mercer and Thalira walked through the city together. Citizens peered from behind crystal pillars, witnessing the unlikely alliance between human and Zorinthian. Mercer noticed the subtle details of daily life, how Zorinthians valued discipline, loyalty, and cooperation, yet had little experience with the human capacity for empathy and negotiation. Thalira, for her part, observed Mercer's calm demeanor, his careful consideration of each action, and his unwavering commitment to morality. She realized that their strengths complemented each other in ways that could shape the future of both their peoples. As night fell on Zorinthia, the twin suns dipping below the horizon, Mercer returned to his chamber exhausted but alert. The events of the day had been physically and mentally demanding, yet he felt a sense of accomplishment. He had faced danger, made difficult decisions, and demonstrated qualities that had earned the respect of the most powerful being on the planet. More importantly, he had proven that cooperation between human and Zorinthian could achieve what neither could accomplish alone. Thalyra, alone in her private chamber, reflected on the day's events. She had expected the human to kneel, to show submission, and to follow her instructions blindly. Instead, he had stood tall, acted decisively, and worked alongside her as an equal. She realized that her assumptions about humans had been incomplete, and that Mercer's presence was teaching her lessons she had never anticipated. Strength, she now understood, was not measured solely by power or authority. It was measured by courage, intelligence, empathy, and integrity. Mercer drifted into sleep with the knowledge that the trials of the next day would be even greater. Yet he felt a quiet confidence, knowing that he had begun to bridge the gap between their worlds. Through cooperation, courage, and respect, he had earned the Queen's trust and demonstrated the potential for human and Zorinthian partnership. The challenges. The city of Zorinthia was quiet, but the tension in the air was far from gone. The rogue generals had been defeated, but their threat had revealed vulnerabilities in both the city and its leadership. Captain James Mercer knew that the work was not finished. Today was about more than survival or strategy. It was about forging a future where humans and Zorinthians could coexist, cooperate, and trust one another. As he prepared for the day, he reflected on the trials, battles, and decisions that had led him to this moment. He had proven his courage, intellect, and moral judgment, but now the ultimate test awaited, establishing lasting respect and partnership with Queen Thalyra and showing that unity could triumph over pride and fear. When Mercer entered the palace hall, Thalyra was already there, standing tall in her usual commanding posture, yet there was a difference in her demeanor, a subtle warmth behind the strength, a curiosity tempered by respect. The twin suns filtered through the crystalline walls, casting patterns of light across the hall, creating an atmosphere of both beauty and solemnity. Thalyra's glowing eyes met Mercer's, and for a moment the usual tension between ruler and guest softened. "Captain Mercer," she said, her voice steady but carrying a hint of something new. "Trust. You have proven yourself in ways I did not expect. Your courage, your intelligence, and your loyalty have earned you my respect. But today, we face not only the remnants of those who would oppose me, but also the challenge of establishing a future where our peoples can coexist without fear." Mercer nodded, his face calm but alert. "I understand, Your Majesty. I am ready to do whatever is necessary to ensure safety, cooperation, and understanding between our worlds." The first order of the day was to assess the city and repair the damage from the recent attacks. Mercer moved through the streets with Thalyra, observing citizens emerging cautiously from shelters. He noted their expressions, fear, relief, and curiosity, as they looked upon the human soldier who had fought alongside their queen. They whispered among themselves, amazed that a human could stand beside Thalyra and face danger with such courage and skill. Together, Mercer and Thalyra visited key locations throughout the city, coordinating relief efforts and security measures. Thalyra issued commands with precision, yet she paused to listen to Mercer's suggestions. His human perspective offered insights she had not considered, such as optimizing evacuation routes, reinforcing critical structures, and establishing communication networks to prevent misinformation and panic. As they worked, the bond between them grew stronger. Thalyra began to see Mercer not as an outsider, but as a partner whose presence brought clarity, strategy, and balance. Mercer, in turn, gained a deeper understanding of Zorinthian culture, their discipline, their loyalty, and their deep sense of honor. He realized that respect was a two-way street. requiring both action and observation, courage and humility. Midday brought a new challenge. Scouts reported that a small faction of the rogue generals had regrouped in the outskirts of the city, attempting to regain control. Though their numbers were limited, their intent was clear. They sought to destabilize the Queen's rule and provoke further conflict. Mercer and Thalira quickly devised a plan to intercept the faction before they could strike again. Mercer led a coordinated strike team of human and Zorinthian soldiers, moving through the crystalline terrain with caution. The terrain was hazardous, filled with jagged formations, unstable surfaces, and unpredictable energy flows. He relied on observation and strategy, guiding the team to positions that maximized their advantage while minimizing risk. Thalira's forces followed, moving with precision and strength, ready to engage any threat. The encounter was tense. The rogue generals had expected the Queen to act alone, relying on brute force and instinct. Mercer's presence and strategy disrupted their plans. He anticipated their movements, created diversions, and coordinated attacks that outsmarted them at every turn. Despite the chaos, he remained focused on minimizing harm, ensuring that civilians and even lower-ranking enemy soldiers were not unnecessarily harmed. Thalira observed from a distance, her glowing eyes following every move. She recognized the human's skill, courage, and moral clarity, realizing that strength was not just about power, it was about intelligence, foresight, and the protection of life. Mercer's approach complemented her own abilities, creating a synergy that the rogue generals could not overcome. The final confrontation came when Mercer faced the chief of the regrouped faction alone. The general, skilled and ruthless, attempted to intimidate him with threats and aggressive maneuvers. Mercer remained calm, analyzing weaknesses, predicting attacks, and using the environment to his advantage. He avoided unnecessary violence, relying on strategy, quick thinking, and courage. In the end, the rogue general was subdued, not destroyed, demonstrating Mercer's ability to achieve victory without unnecessary destruction. With the city secure and the rogue faction neutralized, Mercer and Thalira returned to the palace. The citizens watched them from the streets below, witnessing the human soldier and the Queen standing together, a symbol of courage, trust, and the possibility of peace between worlds. Thalira's pride remained, but it was tempered by respect and admiration for Mercer's bravery, intelligence, and integrity. In a private chamber, Thalira spoke to Mercer, her tone softer than ever before. "Captain Mercer, you have taught me lessons that no battle could have shown. You have demonstrated that true strength lies not only in power and authority, but in courage, wisdom, empathy, and the courage to stand for what is right. I underestimated humans, and I was wrong to assume that submission was the only way to show respect. You have earned not just my respect, but my trust and partnership." Mercer bowed his head slightly, acknowledging her words without arrogance. "I am honored, Your Majesty. I only acted according to my principles, and I am grateful for the opportunity to work alongside you. Together, we have protected your people and shown that cooperation between our worlds is possible." Thalira studied him for a long moment, then made a decision that would mark a new era for Zorinthia. "You shall stand beside me, not as a subject but as an equal. Your courage and wisdom have proven that humans are capable of more than I believed. From this day forward, you will be my advisor, my partner, and a symbol of the alliance between our peoples." Mercer felt a mixture of humility and pride. He had arrived on Zorinthia as a guest and a soldier, uncertain of what awaited him. Through trials, battles, and moral decisions, he had forged trust with a ruler known for her stubbornness and power. The respect and partnership offered to him were not merely rewards. They were recognition of shared values, courage, and the ability to see beyond differences. In the days that followed, Mercer and Thalira worked closely to rebuild the city and strengthen the alliance between humans and Zorinthians. Citizens began to see the benefits of cooperation, witnessing human and Zorinthian forces working side by side to repair damage, provide security, and establish communication networks. The presence of Mercer as an advisor and partner to the Queen reassured them, showing that understanding and collaboration could triumph over fear and conflict. The Queen herself changed in subtle but meaningful ways. She learned to listen more, to value perspectives different from her own, and to recognize that true leadership required both strength and humility. Mercer, meanwhile, gained insight into Zorinthian culture, appreciating their discipline, loyalty, and sense of honor. Together they forged a bond built on mutual respect, trust, and shared purpose. One evening, as the twin suns set, casting long shadows across the crystalline city, Mercer and Thalira stood on a balcony overlooking the streets. Below, the citizens moved freely, children playing, families reunited, and soldiers maintaining watch without the tension of battle. The city was alive, vibrant, and safe, a testament to the courage, strategy, and cooperation that had guided them through recent challenges. Thalira spoke softly, almost to herself, yet loud enough for Mercer to hear. I expected humans to bend, to follow, to submit. I did not expect courage, loyalty, and wisdom. You have shown me a new way, Captain Mercer, a way where strength is measured not by fear, but by integrity, action, and respect. Mercer smiled, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. And you have shown me that even the strongest leaders can learn, adapt, and trust. Together, we have proven that two worlds, different though they may be, can stand side by side. As night fully descended, the city of Zorinthia glimmered under the light of its twin moons and stars. Citizens rested peacefully, and the palace stood as a symbol of stability, courage, and unity. Mercer knew that challenges would continue to arise, but for the first time, he felt confident that humans and Zorinthians could face them together, as partners rather than adversaries. The story of the stubborn alien queen and the human soldier became a legend in the city, told as a tale of courage, intelligence, and trust. Mercer had arrived expecting danger, confrontation, and diplomacy, but he had found something more, a partnership built on respect, shared values, and the courage to stand together against fear and uncertainty. And so, as the night settled over, Zorinthia, Captain James Mercer and Queen Thalira looked toward the future. The twin suns would rise again, bringing light to a world that had learned the power of cooperation. The bond. The city of Zorinthia had barely begun to recover from the rogue general's attack, when another challenge arose, one more dangerous and personal than before. Captain James Mercer knew that the events of the previous day had tested strategy, courage, and cooperation. But today would test trust, loyalty, and decisive action under extreme pressure. As dawn broke over the crystalline city, the twin suns casting long beams of golden light across spires and towers, Mercer readied himself. He knew that his role was no longer just that of a guest or observer. He had become a partner in the Queen's leadership, a human who now held the fate of the city alongside Thalira herself. The alarm sounded again, resonating through the palace and streets below. Thalira, standing tall at the central balcony, spoke with controlled urgency. Captain Mercer, the rogue generals have returned, but this time they aim not just for the city, they aim for me. They intend to remove me from power, and your people are in their path. We must act immediately. Mercer's pulse quickened, but he remained calm. He had faced danger before, but nothing like this. What is the plan, Your Majesty? He asked, scanning the holographic displays showing the movement of the enemy forces. Thalira gestured toward the city. We must defend the citizens, secure the palace, and neutralize the generals. I will lead the main force, and you will coordinate, with both human and Zorinthian defenders to protect civilians and cut off the enemy's advance. Your insight is needed more than ever. The two leaders moved quickly through the palace corridors, joined by elite guards and advisors. Mercer noticed the determination in the faces around him, yet he also saw fear and hesitation. The citizens were counting on them, and one wrong decision could mean disaster. He focused on analyzing patterns, predicting enemy movements, and identifying strategic points to strengthen. The first confrontation occurred at the outer walls of the palace. Rogue commanders had positioned siege units to breach the crystal barriers, and the city's defenses were stretched thin. Mercer worked with the Zorinthian engineers to reinforce weak points, directing human units to support Zorinthian squads in critical locations. His instructions were clear and precise, relying on careful observation and rapid adaptation to evolving circumstances. The battle escalated quickly. Energy blasts illuminated the streets, while crystalline structures shivered under impact. Citizens scrambled to safety as Mercer coordinated evacuation routes, ensuring minimal casualties. Thalira moved with her elite force, striking with precision and confidence, her energy surges cutting through enemy ranks. Mercer's human insight complemented her instincts, predicting ambushes and suggesting tactical maneuvers that the Queen's forces might not have considered. At one point, Thalira found herself trapped in a narrow alley, surrounded by 3 of the rogue generals. Mercer, observing from a nearby vantage point, realized the danger immediately. Without hesitation, he signaled a small strike team to flank the generals, drawing them away from the Queen. The maneuver worked, but Mercer saw that Thalira was still vulnerable. Summoning every ounce of courage, he dashed through the chaos to reach her side. His movements were swift and precise, avoiding attacks and using the environment to shield himself and Thalira. Thalira's eyes met his, a mixture of surprise and approval reflecting in their glow. For the first time, she understood that Mercer's courage was not just theoretical. It was action under fire, decisive and selfless. He risked his life not for glory, but to protect her and the people of Zorinthia. This act of loyalty, bold and uncompromising, began to shift the Queen's perception even further. She realized that trust could be earned through deeds, not merely expected through rank or authority. Meanwhile, Mercer's human tactics began to turn the tide of the battle. Using diversionary attacks, carefully placed traps, and clever coordination between human and Zorinthian soldiers, he disrupted the enemy's formations. The rogue generals, confident in their knowledge of Zorinthian strategy, were unprepared for the unpredictable approach that Mercer brought. Slowly but surely, the rebels' momentum faltered. Amid the chaos, Mercer noticed a group of civilians trapped in a collapsing plaza. Without hesitation, he directed nearby soldiers to create a safe path, guiding people to shelter and ensuring that no one was left behind. The actions were risky but necessary. The Queen, observing from above, recognized his prioritization of life over victory, a quality she admired deeply. She had never encountered a leader, alien or human, who acted with such unwavering integrity in the heat of battle. As the conflict reached its climax, Mercer and Thalira discovered the main rebel commanders attempting to regroup and strike at the palace directly. They had underestimated the combination of human foresight and Zorinthian strength. Mercer devised a plan. He would lead a small unit to intercept the commanders while Thalira engaged the bulk of their forces. The operation required precision, courage, and trust between them, as any mistake could spell disaster. The confrontation with the rogue commanders was tense and dangerous. Mercer navigated narrow streets and collapsing structures, anticipating enemy moves and using the environment to his advantage. He avoided unnecessary violence, incapacitating opponents when possible, and leading the enemy into traps and containment zones. Thalira engaged the larger forces with her energy surges, her power both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Together, human strategy and alien strength created a synergy that the rebels could not overcome. At a critical moment, Mercer faced the chief rogue general alone. The commander, skilled and ruthless, attempted to intimidate him with threats and aggression. Mercer, however, remained calm, analyzing weaknesses and predicting attacks. Using his training, quick thinking, and agility, he outmaneuvered the general, finally subduing him without unnecessary harm. The demonstration of intellect, courage, and restraint impressed Thalira profoundly. She had witnessed strength in a new form, one that did not rely on dominance alone, but on careful planning, morality, and quick action under pressure. With the rebel commanders neutralized and the city secured, Mercer and Thalira returned to the palace. The streets below were filled with citizens cautiously emerging from shelters, witnessing their rulers standing together after the ordeal. Mercer's face was streaked with sweat and dirt, but his posture remained tall and confident. Thalira, for her part, radiated authority, yet there was a subtle softness in her demeanor that had not been present before. The Queen turned to Mercer, her glowing eyes reflecting respect and admiration. "You have done more than survive the battle, Captain Mercer," she said. "You have shown courage, intelligence, and loyalty in ways I did not expect. You have risked your life not for glory, but for the protection of my people and mine. I underestimated the value of human integrity." Mercer inclined his head respectfully. "I only did what was necessary, Your Majesty. Your leadership inspired me as much as my training guided me. We succeeded because we worked together, not because of one person alone." For the first time, Thalira allowed herself to smile, a gesture rare and sincere. "Perhaps there is more to humans than I believed. Today, you have taught me a lesson, not only in strategy and courage, but in trust and honor. You have earned not just respect but partnership." The aftermath of the battle provided time for reflection. Mercer walked through the palace halls, observing the city below and the people who had survived the chaos. He thought about the unexpected bond that had formed between him and Thalira. What had begun as a mission of diplomacy had transformed into a partnership of mutual respect. He realized that the Queen, for all her power and pride, had vulnerabilities, fears, and uncertainties that could be challenged not through force, but through understanding and courage. Thalira, in her private chambers, reflected on the events of the day. She had assumed that strength alone would secure loyalty, that fear would command obedience. Yet Mercer had shown her that true strength came from courage, wisdom, empathy, and moral clarity. He had stood beside her when others might have faltered, acted decisively when plans were uncertain, and risked everything for the good of the people. In doing so, he had demonstrated qualities she had not expected from a human, challenging her assumptions and reshaping her understanding of leaderships. Night fell over Zorinthia. The twin suns dipping below the horizon, Mercer prepared for rest. The day had been exhausting, filled with danger and high-stakes decisions, yet he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had proven his worth not just to survive, but to guide, protect, and inspire. The bond between him and Thalira had grown stronger, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences under pressure. In the quiet of the chamber, Mercer reflected on the lessons learned. Cooperation, courage, and moral clarity were not just ideals. They were tools for survival and for forging alliances. He understood that the challenges ahead would be even greater, but he felt ready. He had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and emerged not only alive but strengthened in purpose and conviction. Thalira, too, rested with a new understanding. The human soldier had shown her that power alone was not enough. True leadership required wisdom, courage, and the ability to trust others. Mercer had challenged her assumptions and proven that even the strongest ruler could learn from those she once considered beneath her. As the city settled under the soft glow of Zorinthi,